college students can't read. At least the elite college students can't. An article that has been shared, dissected, talked about came from the Atlantic, and I believe it was roughly a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Now, you can't read it on the website because paywall. But there are workarounds, such as taking the link, put it in the Wayback Machine, and then as it loads, before it hits you with the paywall again, because that does happen with the Wayback Machine, you hit Control P, and it brings up the option to either print the article or create a PDF, and you create a PDF, and that's your workaround. I'll be reading maybe some bits and pieces from this article and other articles, but the initial one, because people have opinions, clearly. I do want to note that I'm Canadian, and we do not use college and university interchangeably. College and university are two completely separate things. College is for like those that want to get an associate's degree, for example, or like a certificate of some kind, whereas universities are the 4-year, slightly more expensive, options with student housing, and you usually get a bachelor's and either like a master's and a PhD if you do go back. So that's the big difference. So yeah, if I keep saying university, it's interchangeable for Americans. It is not, however, for me. So when people ask me if I'm in college, I say no, because I'm not in college. It's university here, right? There's a big difference. And it's sort of, universities are sort of the thought process around it is changing. The sort of things around it is changing, where we still see universities as the way you do want to go, and college is sort of looked down upon. However, that's changing. That point of view, that's what I was looking for, is definitely changing, and in a good way, because some of the smartest people I know went to college instead of university because they realized that university was not for them, and universities were either too expensive or too far away, and there was a college nearby. There's a college in the city next to me, so like it's not interchangeable, right? However, the sort of thought process around university versus college is definitely changing. The POV around that is definitely changing. So if I keep saying university, it's a linguistic difference. Keep that in mind. Don't come at me about it in the comments. So the article mainly blames the fact that high school students should be assigned full texts and to be taught how to engage with these texts and sort of read between the lines and infer about certain things. In America specifically, because this article does specifically center around the US college system, so to speak, teachers are told by administrations to move away from the full text and give excerpts and shorter passages to work with, such as interviews or articles or essays, so to speak, right? Which there's nothing bad about assigning them, but those should be used as supplementary material, not as the main material, right? So for example, if you assign Frankenstein in class and you expect, in a perfect world, the students read it, right? And you assign an essay about Frankenstein and how it relates to the myth of Prometheus from Greek mythology, for example. And then you ask, hey, like, what do you agree with? What do you not agree with? That's your essay topic. That's the way it should go in a perfect world. However, this is not a perfect world. I think this is clearly one reason, right? But students are not to blame. They are being failed by the adults in their lives, specifically the administrators and the politicians and the people in power, as well as actually their parents, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Changes in expectations, changes in reading lists, not to mention all the book bans that are not only affecting reader adults, right, but also reader kids and incoming readers and reader adults with reader kids, because it's just, I'll talk about the specific story I'm thinking of in a moment, but like, it limits everything. You had this like upside down pyramid, you had so many options, and then they're just like limiting it completely, right? Depending on your age, for example. It could be a 16-year-old, right? It could be an 18-year-old, right? Going into library and they can't go to the adult section, although they're able to read adult books, or they've been reading YA books for the past several years because of these book bans, because they're not allowed without an adult, but they're the adult, you know, and it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Also, I don't remember what the age of adults are in the US, but anyways, I'm also basing it on Canada, but the last third place we have in North America, and you know, it's a really big problem that we have here, are libraries. And for those that don't know, third places are places where you can just be. You can just exist. You know, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to buy anything. Libraries aren't just for books and movies and computer access. They can also give you access to educational programs. They can also give you access to aid programs, to government programs. Librarians are truly one of the only things that are holding the world of literacy together. Literally the only people. You know, so libraries are just this amalgamation of so many things, and people really take it for granted. You know, you aren't expected to buy anything. You know, a lot of cafes nowadays, because people sort of spend so much time working on their laptops, they have to implement these no laptop from this time to this time, no laptop on the weekends, like chat with your friends. You know, they have to implement these rules where it's like no tech, because like this work culture is genuinely insane. But that's a story for another day. But the specific incident that I was thinking of was this mom, her older child and her baby child, so a baby that does not know even probably how to walk, went to the library. And this is in one of the states that's notorious for book bans and having all these bans come into policy very, very quickly, that it's really concerning. Basically, they go to the library and, you know, they're chilling, having a good time, as one should at the library, because libraries are amazing. And then the older child wants to go to the adult fantasy fiction section, so the adult section, to get Lord of the Rings, right? And she's not allowed, because there is a sign that you either have to go in with an adult, okay? Or you have to have your adult sign a form that will grant you like a full access library card. And the kicker is that the mom couldn't go in with her baby because she had the baby, which is just bonkers. It's just absolutely bonkers to me. I'm just like, oh my god. So I think in the end what they did was the mom watched the kid get to the book, and that was okay with the librarians. But holy hell, like it's so mind-boggling that I can't even wrap my head around it. Anyways, I shall continue with my little ramble. Really, we should be blaming, as I said, the politicians, the parents, and the administrators that put in place these rules and let these book bans come to fruition. Now, this is a sort of, not a word for word quote, but it's a rewrite of the quote, because less words, and I don't want to be caught plagiarizing, you know? I'm not going to submit this anywhere, but Turnitin haunts my dreams, okay? One thing the article says that nags me a little bit as a big reader, right? Literally the fact that I have a channel, okay, the fact that I have multiple social media, like, accounts and stuff that are all center books should tell you enough that I am a big reader. So this is what is sort of stated in the article. For years, Dames, one of the main professors that were talked to by the author of this article, for years, Dames has asked his first years what their favorite book is, and answers varied from Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre, but now most have said YA books, and Percy Jackson seems to be a popular one. Then the article goes to sort of, I don't know, throw shade at Percy Jackson, I guess. I'm just like, okay. I understand that students citing young adult or middle grade, which Percy Jackson is actually. It's not young adult, it's middle grade. It's middle grade, okay? Very specific here. Can be concerning to a certain extent because it could be that they didn't explore beyond those genres and that level of vocabulary. Because while middle grade can be very, very sophisticated, it can be very, very intense in its world building and its character arcs and its just overall general plot lines, it is still using fairly simple language, right? If we take the verbiage in Percy Jackson versus the verbiage in The Way of Kings, those are two very different levels of vocabulary, right? Despite Sanderson having a pretty straightforward writing style and not using particularly big words, it's still a very, very drastic difference in terms of vocabulary. So, with that being said, it can be concerning because they didn't explore beyond those genres and that level of vocabulary, but you also don't know what their situation was and why it's their favorite. Citing young adult may just mean that they read at the age young adult books cater to, which is usually before like grade 7, 6, 7, 8-ish, and during high school, so 9, 10, 11, 12. But precisely the time where students are forced to come away from full-length novels, either to move away for standardized testing expectations or simply book bans, or even looking at shorter excerpts to give ample time for all the required all the required learning during the semester, and figuring out a way to also accommodate more students than high school teachers are able and equipped to handle. So that's, that's something that definitely comes to mind because, sometimes, I went to a Catholic French school, which is definitely an experience. And so in every single subject, the teachers expected a lot from us, especially those that were clear favorites of the teacher, so to speak. And yes, I was one of those that was I don't want to say clear favorite, but I was definitely someone who bonded with one of the English teachers, and she still remembers me. My brother has her now. But, so she expected more from me than anyone else did, really. But that sort of pull away from full-length novels, during that age where they are reading Percy Jackson could be detrimental. And clearly it is. Because if they're saying that Percy Jackson is their favorite, it's because they were forced to pull away from the long ones, thrown at short excerpts, and not given the chance to expand their vocabulary or even become interested in expanding their vocabulary. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. I've been rambling for a while. I went off script. I shall continue. Additionally, I constantly say that Percy Jackson remains one of my favorite series of all time. Why? It has a unique voice and writing style, while also being able to take you through very dark plot points with as much gentleness as possible. I hope that makes sense, because Percy Jackson is a very defining moment in my life. I owe a lot to that book series, and I feel like because it's Greek mythology retold, people throw shade at it, just as partly the article did. People look down upon it. But if we, for example, compare when I was younger, the difference in how people reacted to me saying Harry Potter was my favorite series versus Percy Jackson, people would, be like, oh wow, congratulations, Harry Potter, it's such a great series, it's phenomenal. And then when I said Percy Jackson, they'd be like, oh, why would you read that? That's clearly not, a good series. But it was, and it stuck around. And, there's that slight difference. I'm just like, okay, what is it? Is it the fact that the author of the Harry Potter series is British, therefore you're putting her up on a pedestal just because the author of the Percy Jackson series is American. Like, Rick Riordan has done more for a large number of people in this world than J.K. Rowling has. I don't know. I'm just saying. However, Percy Jackson being my favorite series doesn't speak to me not being a reader. It just shows what I enjoy in books specifically, because yes, that's exactly how I would say to go about, like, you know, trying to get back into reading. If you liked Percy Jackson, what did you like about Percy Jackson? Did you like the fact that the character was sarcastic? Did you like the fact that it was told in a very interesting voice? Did you like the fact that, I don't know, there was the Greek mythology aspect, and it was set in the real world, but it had magic, and there was like slight politic balances, and it was kids versus the gods in a sense, kids versus the bad guys. Like, did you like that? Because there are so many books just like that that you can use to get into, and then you can build up your reading stamina, which I heard in another video, which is a really good way of putting it. You can build your reading stamina by starting small. And that's not a bad thing, because everybody starts small somewhere. And usually, in a perfect world, everybody would start small when they're small, right? Because there's a reason that we write small, right? At the beginning. And then work their way up. However, if you're 22 years old, if you're 20 years old, right, and you find Frankenstein intimidating, read a middle grade book. Because that's going to build up your stamina, because you're starting small, and middle grade isn't necessarily a bad thing to try, you know? It's a really, really good way to start reading and to build up this habit. Because do you know how difficult it is to get into middle grade? It is insanely difficult, because middle graders are brutal. Okay, they are so honest in their opinions, and they're just, wow, what did I do? They are brutal in their opinions. Moving on, before I get too carried away. Okay, going back to the whole Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre thing about people citing their favorite books, honestly, I'm thinking that maybe some people's favorite books was Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights, but most people that said that, they probably just said it because their classmates said it. They thought, oh, a classic? That's gonna make me look smarter. It's gonna make me look more sophisticated, more educated. So I guarantee you, a majority of those people that said Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre or Moby Dick or whatever, no. No. Their favorite book probably were not any of those. So, back to the Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre thing. I've read classics, such as Wuthering Heights in high school. I've read Frankenstein, I've read Shakespeare, the Odyssey, the Iliad, Gilgamesh, and a few others sprinkled here and there. I also went to Catholic French school, as I said earlier, but that's a totally different thing. And I still don't think I'd say that any of these classics would be my favorite. However, having read those books in tandem with reading fantasy books for funsies, for the shits and giggles, definitely gives me now a much deeper appreciation and a much deeper understanding for those classics. Like, I didn't understand the themes fully. I didn't understand fully the themes of Frankenstein. Because, again, I was obsessed with fantasy. I didn't want to read Frankenstein. Okay? I didn't want to read Frankenstein and then have to do a test and then have to write an essay. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to read my silly little fantasy books, okay, where people fight and where there's magic and where there's, you know, the big bad guy, and where there's a plot twist where the mentor is actually the bad guy or in leagues with bad guy, all that stuff. You know, I didn't want to read Frankenstein. I don't want to read Wuthering Heights. I have beef with Wuthering Heights, but I will not defend Jacob Elordi being Heathcliff. Okay, moving on. But, like, you know, that kind of thing. Like, I've read them. I'm still not gonna say that they're my favorite. Hope that makes sense. My love for reading and my ability to read and infer and understand between the lines isn't solely due to my teacher and my high school English experience. My love for reading and my ability to read between the lines and infer is in part due to my parents always talking about how important reading is. So I think that parents not going out of their way to teach a love for reading to instill it is one of the bigger problems. And yes, it starts at home. And I'm not saying this to shame working parents or single parents or even parents with children with disabilities, or the parent has a disability themselves. However, the fact of the matter is that a majority of students at these elite colleges that the article is referencing probably don't have a debilitating disability that will, you know, that will that will make it more difficult to read and to focus, okay? I hope that makes sense. I am talking to the parents that did or do have time to interact with their child, but instead choose to place them in front of a screen. And yes, this applies to the little kids as well as the big kids. I, for example, did not have a phone until I was in 6th grade, and the only reason I got a phone was because I started to walk alone to my school, which was 15 minutes away. Living in a big city like Toronto, you want your child to be safe. And even then, it was a small Android. It was my dad's old Android. Something happened with the screen, so there was a line in the middle of the screen. It didn't affect particularly how the phone functioned. It's just a line, and it was not like cosmetic. It was like the screen, right? So there's that. You know, my youngest brother got a phone way earlier. However, my mom did crack down on the amount of time that he was like playing games or watching, and she still does, you know, be like, hey, like, enough playing on the computer, enough watching your phone, go read a book. And so yeah, he does read a book. He reads manga and he reads comics primarily, but at least he's reading. he's reading. Obviously, it's not he will be able to read, to sit down and read, like, I don't want to say proper book, but a proper chapter book with solely words and be able to understand. But that's because we instilled reading, the importance of reading in him very, very early on. This brings me to my next point. Phones and short form content. Now, yes, I also have this problem. And I am a big reader. I have this problem of going onto TikTok for Instagram inspiration, Instagram content inspiration, and I just end up scrolling through what is K-pop edits, House of the Dragon edits, Game of Thrones edits, different book edits. Right now I'm getting Avatar The Last Airbender edits to the song from Mulan, a man out of you, make a man out of you. So there's that, and then I just send them all to my cousin, like 50 at a time, and then next thing you know, I've been scrolling for like 30 minutes when I could have used that 30 minutes to read. So, you know, it's about disciplining yourself as well as your future kids or your kids or the students around you, right? The whole education system needs an overhaul, from how we are teaching kids to read to how we treat those who do read more than the average student. I've heard things where it's like, I remember reading a tweet, whatever, of a mom being like, my child finishes her work and then pulls out her book to read quietly. And the teacher thinks that's rude. Like, you're gonna kill that child's love for reading. At least they're reading and not on their phones. My goodness. You know, or if it's like a you know, instruction time, but like you've finished the thing, like, yeah, I'm gonna read. Libraries, both public and school, over and over again are getting budget cuts all over, and this continues to trickle down until it's primarily the kids that have taken the biggest hit. So like when we had scholastic book fairs, like proper scholastic book fairs, instead of just a bunch of crap there, right? Because like we did have, you know, like little pens and cute erasers and stuff, but it was mainly books and wasn't a bunch of like crap. Or we had like scholastic the pamphlets, you know, the flyers or whatever, that you could, like, you circled a bunch of stuff and then you begged your parents to send in money. Like, we don't really have that. I haven't seen that in forever, you know? Or you had the reading programs, for example, or you had the reading incentives where it's like, if you read so many books, you'll get like a pizza party or something for your class or something like that. We don't have that because, again, budget cuts and stuff. Additionally, subjects such as science and math are given priority, and we are then forced to neglect the humanities, and the college professors complain that these students can't infer because, yes, they were never taught. They were never taught because math and science were given precedence. They were never taught because you can't teach someone the exact way to read between the lines, because you can't teach it in the same way that you teach math and science, because there is no clear-cut answer in the humanities. There's no clear-cut answer in English when you're reading a book and you're trying to figure out what the author means, right? By moving away from taking the time to teach full-length novels, we're coming away from humanity and what it means to be human, you know? By censoring books instead of passing laws regarding violence in movies and specifically mature themes and certain pictures and videos on the internet, we are digging ourselves and the generations of humanity to come into a grave that we may not be able to crawl out of. Standardized testing never helped anyone except the people that can choose. Sorry. I'll have to re-say that again. Whoops. Standardized testing never helped anyone except the people that can choose what is being taught and what isn't. The problem that this situation poses is very grave. I can only hope that the education system will turn around, and I can only hope that the adults in the lives of the incoming kids are going to do better. If you're a college student who stumbles upon this, realize this is you, the college student that has difficulty reading, the college student that cannot read. First off, go do your homework. I have a couple study with me's on my channel in case you need the body doubling. Okay, it has, you know, classical music, no words. It has various, you know, times and stuff. So take your pick. But also check out a few of my videos on how to read more, how to read big books and not feel super intimidated. And that is it for my very first rambly video essay thing. I don't know, I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is a very, very dark situation, and it's kind of terrifying because I grew up always loving reading. Even the family members that aren't big readers, like for example my cousin isn't a big reader, she can, you know, figure out the between the lines. She can figure out the message. Like, she was still taught in the proper way on how to understand the messages. So I hope you enjoyed that. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below as usual. Follow me on all my socials, and I will see you in the next one. Happy reading.